Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Shares with Kevin, where we add value to people's lives happening every other day, 12 on ebizradio.com. For our lunchtime marketing segment, our very own resident genius marketing and communications expert, Craig Page-Lee. How you doing, Craig?
Kevin, I'm well, thanks. Yeah, good to be chatting again. It's just frightening to see how it's just whizzing by. It's show 20 already today. Do you know that?
Holy cow. No, I didn't know it was show 20. Wow, hey? That just well, we've been busy. Right?
Believe me, you're right.
Craig, so I mean, to sort of just kick off today, like, don't you want to just give off or share with us where we started and a bit of the rebranding that we chatted about last week?
Yeah, Kevin, we had a great conversation looking at some important aspects of rebranding and how brand architecture fitted into that. But what I enjoyed the most about it was learning some of the background to the strategies, particularly behind the Google into Alphabet and Google now taking on a secondary role in that brand architecture, and then looking at the detail behind what led to Atz's rebrand. So yeah, great bit of learning for all. So let me give you just a couple of short succinct tips on last week for a takeaway for our audience here. So step number one is to list out why you want to rebrand. It's important to start before planning a rebranding strategy, asking yourself the reasons why you're doing a rebrand, defining the problems or issues that you're facing at the moment, and assess if these are actually a cause for rebranding. For example, is your brand's image outdated? Does it still represent the products and services you offer? Does your brand image appeal to a core target audience? Or does your brand actually need to appeal to an entirely new audience, which in many instances is what we're finding today? Point two is do your market research. You've got to establish if your product's actually still relevant to the current market. You've got to establish what your brand reputation is, vitally important component. Establish how the market has changed, whether it's on the back of economics, different need states for consumers, which actually is driven by economics. Is it through technological innovation and evolution? You need to understand, is your brand too similar to others in the market? Does it stand out enough? And has your brand expanded across new products and services? And in other words, you really have to analyze your current clients, identify any new ideal clients, and know who your brands are for. Point number three, evaluate your competition, a really important component of the 4 points. Assess your competition. Can you identify any emerging trends from those popular brands in your industry? This step may help you identify how to stay relevant to your niche audience. And you need to know what your competitors are saying and doing and how they're representing their brands from all aspects, looking at all areas from logo to tagline, tone of voice, and what their messaging platform is as well. And lastly, evaluate your company's mission and vision. And we've picked up on this a lot over the last few weeks, and I really love this proposition is remember the what, the how, and the why. It's important to develop that meaningful purpose, why you exist. From this, you can then define what future you want to help create and how you're going to achieve that. You therefore need to know who you are and how to deliver your brands and conduct yourself. You must always reflect your values in your rebranding, as these are the benchmark to measure your behavior and performance. And yeah, those are the 4 points to share from last week.
Great, and thank you for giving us a bit of a summary there. In terms of while you're speaking, do smaller brands go to this extent? Do they still apply? Do we still follow those same rules to really evaluate it to that degree, or do we kind of cut out half the process?
That's a great question, Kevin. No, smaller brands do also. They don't cut out. So there are a lot of smaller brands that do also adopt this. And in fact, it's more important in times for smaller brands to do this, because some of the big brands, tongue tie there, are actually leveraging off their reputation, positive reputation, off the legacy, off the bigger client base they got, off some of the products, even products that may be at the end of their life cycle. Some of the bigger brands are able to leverage it and squeeze a bit more life out of that. Yeah. And it's therefore all the more important for these smaller brands really to get to understand how to position themselves relative to becoming a challenger in that particular instance.
Yeah. So in terms of that, Greg, so moving into where we're going today, what are we chatting about today?
Yeah, so Kevin, I want to look at the topic of customer experience today. I mean, you'll probably appreciate that this is a really wonderful natural flow from our last three conversations, where we covered the basic rules of branding, the importance of brand architecture, and what successful rebranding projects entail, and actually why they're important. So let's look at these topics and see how they build from each other and how they lead to today's topic. So we started 3 weeks ago with the basic rules of branding, Kevin. And as you know, there are multiple reasons for branding. Some of these for rebranding, I should say. Some of these being the fact that the brand creates a difference and therefore important at the purchase decision-making stage, and that brands add value to help connect with consumers. So, you know, that's why you brand or rebrand. The emotional connection here is really important, is to understand why people are buying those brands. We then moved on further to look at the topic of brand architecture, which creates the logic and the structure to an organization's brands. For instance, the branded house, which maintains a focus on a single well-known and consistent brand, often known as the parent brand, for instance, FedEx. And then we looked at the house of brands, which consists of independent brands within a portfolio, each having their own audience, their own marketing need, and in many instances, their own look and feel, like Unilever, for instance, a broad range of fundamentally different products operating in different categories and at different price points. Important to note here, though, is that the impact that the parent brand has on those independent brands when applying an endorsement strategy, they can really leverage that particular brand in a subtle, nuanced way. And that would apply to brands in the P&G stable, for instance, as well. And then we have the hybrid solution, which caters for a mix of the branded house and house of brands propositions within one portfolio. And more often than not, this includes an endorsed strategy as well. And it really is, it's sort of that catch-all space that allows this mix of brands to have some kind of association with a parent brand. And a really great example for me here is the Coca-Cola example, where you have your core Coke products on the one hand, which is the branded house, where Coca-Cola Light, Coca-Cola Sugar Free. But on the other side, you have the branded house, the house of brands products, where you're looking at the Sprites and the Fantas, where obviously, again, they got their own look and feel, their own positioning, their own marketing strategies, etc. Yeah, and then the extension of that is we then looked at some important examples of rebranding that I mentioned earlier, the likes of Google into Alphabet and AXA into their new visual style.
Yeah.
With that all in place, you can now see the importance, how this leads to the topic of customer experience, because with all the brand building principles in place, it goes without saying that designing the right experience for a customer is important to actually positioning brands, hence today's topic.
Yeah. So I mean, and it's all making sense to me, Craig. I absolutely understand the logic and flow from building the brand to now positioning for your customer engagement and experience. It does, however, seem to be a complex process. Just every single one of us may be after a very different experience based on our needs from one brand to another.
Yeah, Kevin, that's again a great point, because you and I absolutely could have a fundamentally different need and expectation from the very same brand, and brands need to be able to understand that and know what triggers are going to create the right experience for you versus me or anyone else. And even within communities of brands, there are slight nuances of those particular brand experiences. So yeah, but again, at the end of the day, hence the evolution of customer experience management, because that really can take that multiple expectations, start working it in a way that you are getting closer to the expectation that you have versus the expectation that I have. But let's quickly look at the two terms and see how we build on that. So, excuse me. There's a really great article on SAS.com which defines customer experience as your customer's perceptions, both conscious or subconscious, of their relationship with your brand, resulting from all of their interactions with your brand during the customer life cycle. And important here again, Kevin, is you may come into a brand life cycle at a different stage to me, and therefore the expectations of the brand at that particular point in the life cycle are different to mine, because I could be at the end of that particular brand life cycle or be in a very different comfort zone and trust point with the brand. And it's about understanding those. So gaining this depth of knowledge about customers isn't something that just happens. It comes from extracting custom insight from all touch points and channels across the entire brand-owned organization. And it's about harnessing the customer data from online channels and beyond and extracting valuable insights and really using that data. Take note of this, with speed and precision. So that speed and precision will help you get to your expectation point as quickly as you hope you would, and me at the same time, and then eventually level out the collective experience and expectations within that brand space. I also want to share the customer experience management is about designing that anticipated experience that a customer is going to have with a brand in such a way that it exceeds expectation. Take note, exceeds expectation, and leaves the customer delighted and obviously then an advocate of the brand in question. So while this and many of the definitions noted online are very functional, Kevin, the best definition of customer experience that I came across is from Brian Chesky, co-founder and CEO of Airbnb. And he notes the following in his definition, and I think you're going to appreciate this. So what would a 10-star check-in be? A 10-star check-in would be the Beatles check-in in 1964. I'd get off the plane and there'd be 5,000 high school kids cheering my name with cards and welcome me to the country. I'd get to the front yard of your house and there'd be a press conference for me. And it would be just as mind-blowing, just as a mind-blowing experience. So what would an 11-star experience be? I would show up at the airport and you'd be there with Elon Musk and you're saying, we're going to space.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this definition of customer experience is seen as a set of expressions, impressions, and interactions between a customer and a company that result in certain perceptions of that company that in turn drive some type of action in the near or long term. And Kevin, this definition takes in the multiple touch points that occur between a customer and a brand over time, which eventually results in the curation of stronger relationships or the poor lack thereof. And the impact on overall influence of each of those interactions varies, but this definition assumes that they all work together to drive that customer's final decision-making process.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to look at the broader, with having looked at the broader definitions, I think the perfect time is to ask you, what was your best customer experience and how did it make you feel and why?
I think for me, it's just recently happened where I was online with a online platform, and the platform's called Cohost. So Cohost is sort of a Hootsuite kind of application that you can use. Long story short, I'd given registered with a different email address, and between then and then, email address changed. And the email wasn't available anymore. And I was like, oh, okay, so if my something changed and I couldn't find the password and having not used it for like a month or two, and I was like, okay, so how the hell do I get hold of the platform when I don't have the email? So I just went online and I was literally chatting to someone online, and within about a minute, someone spoke to me and said, okay, cool. What are the other accounts that you've connected to this account? And I said, no, well, there's a Twitter account. They said, okay, cool. Send me a message via Twitter to just confirm that we're having this conversation, and then I can reset your email for you. And within literally 7 minutes, there was no kind of waiting. There was like, immediate attention. And I was like, that's, really great customer service. There's like, it was almost instantaneous where someone, like my issue was there, I needed to solve it, and they solved it. Like, So I like, yeah, Cohost.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah, I must admit, I had quite a good customer experience this Sunday, actually needing to head out and go and do the task that I had to, that you're aware of. My car wouldn't start.
Oh.
You know, and my car is nowhere near retirement age. So, you know, I phoned the Subaru call center helpline and put me through to Europe Assist. And whilst the customer data capture process was a little bit prolonged and arduous, the minute that call was registered and validated and approved, the technician who came out was just the best experience. From the minute I got the SM, he phoned, he gave me every 5 minutes check-in as to where he was, how close he was. When I got here, it was mask on, it was the right questions, opened the bonnet, tested the battery with the right technology elements, and literally within 3 minutes, I was up and started and ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, follow-up call, closed the call at the end of the day, and it was just an absolute pleasure. Because the one thing that I challenged the guys in the call center on when capturing the data said, in closing this call, you haven't given me any information on how long it's going to take for the technician to come here. The minute the technician phoned, the first thing he said, I'm 20 minutes away, I'll keep you updated every 5 minutes. And he closed the call in a really good, positive experience for me.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question on the negative experience, Kevin.
Yeah. Negative would be, wow. Am I even allowed to mention the brands?
Why not? Because, you know, they need to learn from these things.
Well, I'm like, I've been an F&B client since the Voice of Steve days, and I to this day cannot tell you that I've ever had an experience with that bank. If I have a query or a complaint or anything, it's laborious, it's time consuming, it's time on my phone, sitting there waiting for someone to help. It's just, you know, and the thing about changing your bank accounts is like, there's quite a process to it, you know, so you're there because it's convenience and comfort.
Yeah.
But essentially, not the greatest service. I don't recommend them for service whatsoever.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I've been with F&B since 1985.
Yeah.
85, and I wouldn't leave them, not for all the money in the world.
Yeah, that just goes to show, right?
Yeah, because they've actually, there are moments where you just that you know, phoning in on the call center and the IVR, and that's just a pain in the ass. You just want to talk to some human being to help you through the process. I totally get and understand that, but I must admit that from a service delivery point of view, generally I've been absolutely satisfied with F&B.
I mean, if I look at the app, I think the app does fantastic things. I'm like, that's convenient. It works. It's quite immediate on anything and everything you're doing. So for me, that's great. But when I'm like having to deal with someone at F&B, I'm like, you know, if I have to rate the brand on the service that they give, and that's the scary question, because I was just thinking now, like, is that the next conversation to have? It's like the rating of a brand is, you know, a measure of how well their service delivery is given, you know.
We actually touch on some of that in our conversation today, interestingly enough. Because that's all key and part and parcel of customer experience. Yeah.
Yeah, like you kind of go, well, then why the hell are we, like, how great is this brand if they can't meet and deliver on customer service?
Well, as we say then, you know, it goes without saying that customer experience that is positive and exceeds expectation, Kevin, is crucial to the success of that brand. Because remember, delighted customers are obviously more likely to become an advocate to the brand, which in turn helps grow the bottom line. And, you know, for F&B, it's not going to grow the bottom line with your customer experience.
Yeah. So I mean, I must admit, I'll probably question every customer experience I ever have again for the rest of the year. But what can you share with us in terms of our listeners with a strategy and application of customer experience management?
Yeah. Kevin, a lot's been written about the topic, especially as brands are needing to evolve and innovate and build layers to improve their customer experience ratings. So what I've done is I pulled content from a few of those articles for the discussion today, but want to start with an article published by Jason Bordeaux on HubSpot.com blog titled "What is Customer Experience and Why It's So Important?" From the article, we note the following. Customer experience is the impression your customers have of your brand as a whole throughout all aspects of the buyer journey. It results in their view of your brand and impacts factors related to your bottom line, including revenue. The two primary touchpoints that create the customer experience are people and products. And it's here where we can ask two simple questions, Kevin. Are you blown away by the performance of the products? And are you delighted by the attention a customer support representative gives to you to help solve your problem? And it plays directly to what you've just experienced. So, point two, looking at the importance of customer experience, we note that a remarkable customer experience is critical to the sustained growth of any business. And a positive customer experience promotes loyalty, helps you retain customers, and encourages brand advocacy. So, Kevin, yeah, again, we know that customers actually have the power, and with technology offering, the widest spectrum of brands are literally available at the click of a button, customers can make purchases on their own and disassociate themselves with brands in many instances. And again, talking to the point of banks, as more and more banks are app-based and some of them actually have no retail representation at all, like we've discussed in one of our previous shows, you can have the choice right there and then to churn and never go back to that bank because of a bad customer experience. So
yeah.
You therefore obviously understand the importance in this insight of designing a desirable experience across all of those touch points so that you can lock customers in and create repeat visits, Kevin. The key requirement, though, is to measure your customer experience so that you can determine what you're doing well and where there's room for improvement. And this is what the likes of F&B need to be doing in your instance.
So now that we're getting to understand the principles and thinking behind the customer experience, you mentioned customer experience management. What is this, and is it different to customer experience?
Yeah, Kevin, a good question. And I'm literally a simple answer from I was thinking about this earlier. Yeah, I'd go on to say that you cannot improve customer experience when you're not managing the process, hence the introduction of customer experience management. But let's look at some fact and detail behind it here. So while I mentioned the topic earlier, I think the deeper definition is really where we need to be focusing on customer experience management. And just by the way, it's also known as CXM. And it's the process of surveying, analyzing, and enhancing customer interactions with your brand. CXM also monitors customer touchpoints and evaluates how you can improve the experience related to each of those touchpoints. In essence, it's a fundamental component of a customer-first strategy because it demonstrates a clear investment in customers' needs, Kevin. So yeah, now we know how to manage customer experience. Let's take it a step further and actually talk about how do we create a great customer experience. So
yeah,
to make a great customer experience, brand owners need to map out that entire customer experience journey. They need to create their buyer personas. They need to establish very positive connections with the customers and prospective customers. And they need to ask for and act on feedback. This feedback loop is a vitally important part of being able to bridge that gap of expectation and non-delivery. And they need to create helpful content and build a community with their particular customers. And Kevin, a point that I can't emphasize enough here is the importance of creating great customer experience is understanding the entire journey a customer takes. You need to think about the customer journey map across every single touch point you have with your customers. From there, you can then focus on how to make each of those touch points a positive experience for the customer. And that's important there for brands to get it right across the entire customer spectrum, because you can have a great experience in the find, the research, click on, open your basket, ready to purchase, but there may be one moment of dissatisfaction. It may be the way the financial mechanisms working for you to check out your basket and fails at that point. You're going to leave, you're going to exit, and you're not going to come back. So it's vitally important to understand every single step in that journey.
Yeah.
Once you've focused on creating the positive experience with your customer, you need to then evaluate your success. Again, ask for feedback from your community. The more in contact you are with your audience, the easier it will be for you to create excellent customer experience, and that virtuous feedback loop and continuous improvement cycle, which is so important for brands these days.
Quick, so once the brand has the customer experience strategy in place and has created some great customer experiences, can you actually measure customer experience effectiveness? Because one of the things we always live by is if you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yes, you can measure customer experience effectiveness, and most, let's call it CX in this instance, customer experience. Most of the success metrics fall into the same categories.
Yeah.
Customer satisfaction, customer loyalty, brand advocacy. And that applies to a myriad of businesses around the world from different sectors, different sizes, etc. So, really closing out on those points is reputation. You really need to ensure that you understand the reputation. But again, you also need to review your product and service quality. And a point that we spoke about quite recently is the importance of employee engagement in the mix. So yeah, customer satisfaction, customer loyalty, brand advocacy, your brand reputation, vitally important. What is the product or service quality, and how are the employees delivering that experience for your brand as well? So yeah, here brand-led businesses really need to define what customer experience means to that respective organization. And once they've defined what it means, is they're actually able to then start defining how to measure each of those particular categories at any particular point in time of the experience through that filter being the likes of the customer satisfaction, loyalty, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So picking up again on that HubSpot article, Kevin, it tells us how to measure customer experience, and it reveals that it can be done in 4 simple steps. Firstly, analyze customer satisfaction survey results, identify the rate and reasons for customer churn, ask customers for product or feature requests, and analyze customer support ticket trends. Jason Bordeaux, the author, as I mentioned earlier, breaks these 4 steps, or at least these steps down into 4 simple further areas of definition. So the first one there is analyzing customer satisfaction survey results. Use customer satisfaction surveys on a regular basis, provides insights into a brand's customer experience and across the various product or service mixes. Point 2, identify the rate and reason for churn. Churn happens. It happens for every single brand, Kevin. It's part of doing business. But it's important that you learn from the churn when it happens so you can prevent it from happening again. Make sure you're doing regular analysis of your churn customers so that you can determine whether the churn rate is increasing or decreasing, what the reasons for churn are, and what your actions are that the team will take in the future to prevent churn from similar situations. Yeah. Ask customers for product or feature requests. This is a great one. Create your forums for your customers to request new product or service features. Shape your new products around that input. Make the products and services more useful and helpful for the problems they're trying to solve. They're brands that are really doing great things in the open platform forums where the product is developed in real time with community input and feedback loops. And I can't emphasize that enough, Kevin. So yeah, whether the forum's shared via email, surveys, social media, or community pages, give customer the opportunities to proactively suggest, offer suggestions. And then lastly, that sub-analysis is analyze customer support ticket trends. You should also analyze the customer support tickets the customer support team are working with. I think what happens is often the support tickets get dumped in a customer support center in the back end, and they often just left to work out on their own. But on a daily basis, there's a need to really understand what are the recurring issues among the tickets, what are the opportunities for creating solutions across this particular entire customer journey.
Quick on that, I just want to say on that feature, from a client perspective, one of the things that I currently use a coaching app, and one of the things that they do is they literally create a roadmap So with all the features and all the requests that they're actually getting in, they're actually road mapping the entire sort of evolution of the app. And they actually have it on their website, and you can go and see, this is a new feature, and in June this will be happening. And so that's one of the things. That's one of the reasons why I use it, because they're so engaged and giving feedback on what's the newest feature. And even if you're putting in requests on, how about this request, and then they'll say, well, this is coming in August. So giving that kind of feedback also.
Oh, that's fantastic, Kevin. And there are so many things we learn from customers engaging with brands on a daily basis, and brands that are just not leaning in to take note of it and learn from it, to brands that are going to be shut out. It's as simple as that. It really is. Yeah. But with that in place, let's look at how to measure customer experience then, Kevin. So, you asked about how we do this. So customer satisfaction score, the CSAT, is one of the most straightforward ways of actually measuring your customer experience. Yeah. Customer satisfaction is a great way to get immediate feedback on whether the customer enjoyed the experience or not. And to determine the CSAT scores, customers are asked to rate their satisfaction with a product, a solution, or a service. And that CSAT tracker is then able to identify how satisfied customers are with their particular product and or service. The other mechanism is customer lifetime value. This measures the total lifetime worth of a customer to a brand, Kevin. And I spoke earlier about where you are in your expectation of that particular brand versus where I am. I could be at the end of my life cycle and falling out into, wanting to move on to another brand. So it's important for that brand to understand what my lifetime value is, and that I'm not exiting too soon, and what are they going to do to ensure that they can keep me locked in the brand, because it costs 67 more times to attract and win new customers than keeping existing customers in the brand cycle. So vitally important to get the customer lifestyle value measures well entrenched. Customer effort score, or CS, is the third most popular metric in business used to measure customer experience. It's purely transactional and typically answers the question, how easy was it for you to solve your problem today? The intent here is to make it as simple as possible for customers to interact with a brand. Follow-up surveys that are brief and to the point, for instance, was it easy, difficult, neither, can really help deliver valuable, actionable data so that things can be quickly changed if needed, Kevin. And then lastly, in this particular point is a favorite for many brands, and that's the Net Promoter Score. This measures how likely customers are to promote a brand to their friends, family, and colleagues based on the experience with that particular company or brand. And when measuring the NPS or Net Promoter Score, consider data and aggregation across teams, because since multiple teams impact on your overall customer experience, you'll need to get a clear understanding and picture of that performance. And for example, their Net Promoter Score for customer service teams across communication channels on phone, email, chat could be quite different across those particular teams. So the Net Promoter Score for sales, as I mentioned, could be very different to the response through phone, email, chat. And attending a webinar, the Net Promoter Score could be fundamentally different in that regard. And that's why I go back to understanding all the touch points in the customer experience journey, from when you're considering through research to the online engagement to the teller in store. All of these particular aspects of the brand engagement have an important role to play on Net Promoter Score. Yeah. So to close on the point, Kevin, the HubSpot.com article tells us to measure the things your customers care about the most. It's easy to do, but treating customer service, CS, and customer experience as if they're the same is not productive. Customer experience should not be measured with customer experience metrics like average handling of average time handling or schedule adherence. Instead, they should rely on metrics like first call resolution, on-time appointments, and the average speed to order to answer that better reflect the customer side of the transaction. So what I like about that is these are actionable measures that can then be interpreted and defined to close that loop and improve performance down the line.
So taking into account all of this, Craig, have you come across any service that address these measures?
Yeah, Kevin, Kantar is one of my favorite go-to sources, and Kantar have got a really great study that addresses the issue of customer experience. And for listeners that don't know, Kantar is a data and evidence-based agency providing insights and actionable recommendations to a myriad of clients, listed entities, and independent clients across the world. And they've got a completely unique understanding of people around the world, how they think, feel, act globally and locally. And they're operating these particular research surveys in over 90 markets. So they don't just help clients understand what's happened, they tell them why, and they can help them shape the future of what's happening. And, you know, with this depth of understanding, it's no surprise that their particular reports and surveys are the benchmark in the industry. So the one that I referenced here is the Kantar CX Plus report. So it's Customer Experience Plus. And it's the only measure, at least it's the only ranking that measures the gap between the brand promise and the customer experience. And on the back of that, it provides an ROI analysis that should enable brands to focus the investment where those gaps are so that they can generate greater results. And most important to note is that it's built on behavioral science search. So it's really getting to the nuts and bolts of understanding decision making and how brands are prompting a decision at the brand interface. Kevin, to look at the CX model, we learned the following. The CX Plus model, I should say, it's built around 5 key areas where brands need to be truly customer centric. And these are defined as followed. A clear brand promise. And as a brand, you have to align to one brand promise that is clearly articulated and understood by the customers. Point 2 is to transfer a clear brand promise to your customers. You need empowered employees. We picked up on the employee conversation earlier. Employees are your center to the customer contracts, Kevin, and they need to be empowered to deliver proactive support and empathetic service. You also have to empower your customers, which leads us to the third factor. This is all about creating a smooth, seamless customer journey. And just to enable customers to do things on their own way is incredibly important. So whatever mission they have to be able to combine online and offline experience with your company or a brand in a way that best suits them. Remember, power's in the hand of the customer. If this is achieved, you can create lasting memory, so sustainable positive emotion for the customer to stay in the minds and hearts of people. And in the end, bringing all of this together to deliver exceptional delivery to reinforce the brand choice. And important here, Kevin, is that the factors are not independent from each other, but each of them brings their own dimension into customer experience. What I like here is that the CX Plus model reflects the belief that providing excellent customer experience is no longer enough, with the most successful companies seeking to positively surprise their customers. And most importantly, they don't disappoint by under-delivering on their brand promise. We know that customer experience and brand strategy can no longer sit in organizational silos, and that brands delivering the most successful experiences are those where the experience of the brand truly lives up to or exceeds the promise of the brand. In short, closing the gap between the promise and the customer experience. So, what should the source of positive emotion be? We know that customer experience can be that actual emotional driver, with positive emotion driving brand preference. A great learning here is that the retail experience is where the biggest alignment or misalignment, as you would know, Kevin, between the promise and the experience occurs. And this is measured across both in-store and both in-store experience and in-store, at least online, and really getting to understand what the expectation is for the in-store experience and what the expectation is for the online experience, I should say. Yeah. So it's important to know that they don't just compare in one category, but actually that they compare you to everybody else across all categories, but also to each of those touch points of the respective brands in those particular categories as well, Kevin. The cool thing here is that there's some amazing statistics again. We always like to share some stats. So the report revealed that there's a significant difference that to 23% between experience and promise not being met in terms of retailer expectations. But yeah, it could also be that the brand could be over-delivering or under-promising in this particular instance. The report then goes on to reveal that there's a positive difference in the instance of 15% between the experience and the promise, where it is delivering against the expectation. But yeah, again, an important point to note is that the brand could actually be under-delivering or over-promising.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice sort of consideration when you're thinking sort of in store and then online. You how do these compare at all? And if they do compare, how do they compare? And what's the criteria that it's being measured by?
But I think we also need to ensure that we don't get caught in the trap of brands over-delivering or under-promising. That 23% negative difference it's a significant difference, Kevin. You know, many brands may just know that they're going to over-deliver, and therefore they're going to under-promise, and they're just going to think that they're leveraging on this reputation of constantly, you know, being ahead of the delivery expectation. But actually what they've done is they've under-promised, and consumers can definitely see through the nonsense and really, you know, call those brands out.
And the concerning point is that, or for me, is what is that 23%? What is the actual value that is placed on, you know, the under delivery of or the over promising of something?
Yes, and yeah, obviously that's got a much bigger negative impact on the bottom line than that 15% of brands that are actually now delivering more than what was expected. Very, very, very good question there. Yeah. So yeah, in fact, that segues nicely into the next point, that brands that are rated higher in customer experience obviously deliver greater returns and growth than those ranked low. And the statistics here, Kevin, are quite significant, with the global overall revenue measured against average retailers is coming in at 5.88 trillion rand. But with truly customer-centric companies, Kevin, it's coming in at $9.2 dollars, I should say, hey? $5.88 trillion. But with truly customer-centric companies, it's coming in at $9.270 trillion.
Yeah.
A phenomenal difference of $3.4 trillion to the bottom line, Kevin, right there.
Quite significant, yes.
Yeah, you know, and the categories that are scoring highest in the great brand experience spectrum are telecom providers, retailers, and technology, or brands that benefit from the use of technology. And we mentioned the whole aspect of online as well. Brands that are moving purely into the online space are really able to leverage their technologies and just open the gap between those that are still in a bit of a, you know, traditional space as well.
Yeah.
What I really like here is there's a great statement by Nigel Hollis, who is Kantar's chief global brand analyst. And he states the following when looking at how inconsistent experience limits lifetime customer potential. He goes on to state, over the past few years, we've heard a lot about the need for companies to pursue customer-centric growth. But it's difficult for a company to maintain its attention on customers' functional and emotional needs when different functions focus on different activities with different key performance indicators. As a result, customer experience may differ dramatically depending where the customer is in the buyer life cycle. While the marketing woos new customers with special offers, existing customers feel neglected and wonder why they are not getting the same deal.
Correct. I mean, on that point, the inconsistent experience limits lifetime customer potential. So, you know, to give you a bit of more lifetime, do you give consistent average experience to your potential clients to sort of average that out?
No, average should never come into the equation. That's that's again a great question. Average doesn't mean that you're delivering away from negative. Average means that you're just average. You're not delivering to the great positive opportunity out there. So average is just doing business. You've got to work the system to really understand what that customer experience requirement is for each of those customers. And I mentioned this earlier on. In that product lifecycle, the association with that brand across the stage you are in the product lifecycle, there is a salient point of best-in-class delivery to meet your expectation. And average is what drops you below the spectrum, and that's when you're going to leave.
Yeah.
So yeah, average shouldn't be a word that's allowed in this particular instance.
Yeah.
Nigel goes on to state that your customers do not distinguish between your product lines, staff, service, call center, website, or social feed. To them, they are all one entity, and experience of them creates your brand. The ideas, the feelings, and associations that will determine whether a person wants to use your product or service. To complicate matters, people's exposure to and experience with the brand changes over time, something I mentioned a few times today. Moving from incidental exposure to a brand for which they have no need and little interest to an intimate understanding of what your brand has to offer, which may lead them to praise or decry it. So Nigel's closing comments here, Kevin, are probably the most important for me. It clearly articulates that marketing does have a role to play in influencing the customer experience. An actual experience of a product has obvious impact on the willingness to buy again, but marketing can also shape that experience.
Yeah. Thank you, Craig. So what important takeaways can you leave with us today for what we've chatted about?
Yeah, Kevin, thanks. A few simple tips. I came across a really great report again as well, titled Braze 2021 Global Customer Engagement Review. For listeners who don't know, Braze Inc. is an American cloud-based software platform that develops customer relation management software, and it's really a business for multi-channel marketing. So the three top trends that are listed in the Customer Engagement 2021 report are noted as follows. Marketing budgets will increase with customer engagement as a priority. Even brands that are confident in their strategies will struggle to show success. Talking about the average aspect there, hey? And more brands will review customer engagement as critical to business growth. The 4 customer engagement practices that impact success are noted as follows. It all starts with messaging your users. Customers use more than one channel, brands should too. The difference between presence and participation is important. That cross-channel approach, a blend of both in-product and out-of-product messaging channels, they tend to have the highest overall performance. We talked about earlier, from the in-store to the online proposition. And great customer engagement doesn't just drive engagement, it actually drives revenue. So in closing on the topic, I want to just touch on 2 statements that we've now addressed a number of times, Kevin. The first point, remember to identify and map all of the brand touch points along the customer experience journey. Clearly understanding the objective of each of these touch points, whether it's searching about a company or its brand, engaging with a customer call center for help on a tricky or technical issue, or dealing with in-store staff when returning a defective product. Collect data from every customer experience at each brand touchpoint, analyze the information, and create feedback loops into the business to improve performance and enhance customer experience at all times. The key objective here is to create consistent brand experience across all channels by integrating channels and brand experience. And this is most effective when consolidating data into that single view of the customer across all of the interactions, channels, products, and moments in time. And the second point here, and last point, Kevin, is remember the principle of right message, right place, right time, every time. To deliver the most value at each customer touch point and improve the customer experience, you really need to map out the specific stages in the customer life cycle so you can deliver the right message to the right place at the right time. Each customer life cycle stage is important, from initial consideration to active evaluation, to the moment of purchase, and even to the post-purchase experience. So understanding where the opportunities are to improve the customer experience is important. And each stage is important to gain more insight that you can then feed back into your marketing process and correct the message, articulate the message more effectively moving forward. That's it from my side.
Fantastic. Craig, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I love this. I love that, again, we guys, if you follow the marketing segment every Thursday at 12, you'll see now Craig really starts at one point and starts hashing it out and tying it all up for us, and really, you know, getting to a point where we makes so much sense at the end of the day, and you kind of go, okay, this is why we have people like Craig in the world.
Yeah, Kevin, there's a lot of information out there. Sometimes I just
Yeah.
get so excited with it, I end up tying myself in knots and, you know, trying to articulate this, because there are so many great contributors to these conversations that it's important to really get the key message across from them. And you know, the intention here is I go and look for the best reports, the best brands, the best individuals that are spending time creating this research and developing these findings for us, so that we can have these great conversations. And that's why, you know, I think what I want to do next week is, you mentioned earlier around some of the key brand segments. What the CX Plus report does is it actually does a deep dive into 3 or 4 key categories, and it starts looking at the success of customer experience across categories, and particularly in the retail space, from traditional retailers to fashion retailers to auto retailers and things like that. And I think we can, you know, close out this whole brand building journey by actually understanding how customer experience metrics are then measured and what they tell us for a couple of key segments in the space next week.
Fantastic. Craig, thank you. Guys, if you want to catch it, it's going to happen every Thursday at 12 on ebursradio.com. Check it out on all the podcast channels, on iTunes and Google, and I think it's Google Podcast. So, yeah, Craig, thank you. And I'll chat to you next week.
Thank you, Kevin. Look forward to that.
Cheers for now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Craig.